What is happening, everyone? I'm Karud. Welcome to another Pokemon Go video. Today I wanted to talk about legacy TMs. Now, what are legacy TMs? Well, this is an item that a lot of players have been asking for pretty much since the beginning of Community Day. And basically these are TMs that would allow certain Pokemon with exclusive moves to be able to get those exclusive moves. Now, some examples of Pokemon that just exceedingly do better with exclusive moves include Mewtwo with Shadow Ball, Legacy Dragonites with Dragon Breath and Dragon Claw. These are really highly coveted Pokemon right now, but the only way to access them at this moment is through trading. And of course, there is a limited supply of these Pokemon. But with Legacy TMs, you would essentially be able to unlock these exclusive moves. And of course, there are a lot of pros and cons when it comes to doing this. So in today's video, I wanted to explore this idea of having Legacy TMs. I want to talk about all of the good things it could do for Pokemon Go, all of the problems that it could fix, as well as talk about some of the cons with Legacy TMs, because I do think that if they were to release Legacy TMs, yes, it could fix a whole bunch of problems that are currently in the game, but it could also create a whole bunch of new ones. So I think it's very important that we talk about all of that. First and foremost, what are my thoughts on Legacy TMs? Well, I am actually someone who does not like exclusive moves. I don't think it fits with the nature of Pokemon as a series. I think having control over what moves your Pokemon has is vital to the strategy aspect of Pokemon, and for Pokemon Go to not give you that, to create this hurdle of time-gated moves essentially. Like, if you want to have certain moves for certain Pokemon, well, you have to participate in certain activities. And a lot of us tend to have, you know, very busy lives, very busy schedules, and it's not always a guarantee that we will be able to participate in a lot of these different days and different events. So yeah, I really don't like exclusive moves, and I really want for them to kind of open it up a little bit, and I do think Legacy TMs is one of the many ways that they could do that. But yeah, let's talk about some of the other pros of Legacy TMs. So Legacy TMs, it's a big fan favorite. I think a lot of players are looking for this item. And I think the big reason why is for the reason I just mentioned. When it comes to Community Day, when it comes to having 100% IV Pokemon or shiny Pokemon, a lot of players have that dismay of getting these Pokemon on a day that's not Community Day. And of course, you could hold off on evolving until a Community Day, but there's no guarantee that certain Pokemon will return as a Community Day Pokemon. So certain Pokemon with certain exclusive moves, they could be lost forever. So I have a 100% Charmander, for example, and I managed to pick it up after December Community Day. So do I hold off on evolving that Charmander up until the next time they decide to bring Charmander back as a Community Day? It could be years down the line, so I'll just be holding on to this Charmander for such a long time. These are some of the problems that Legacy TMs could potentially fix. Now, if we think about what Legacy TMs could encompass for Pokemon Go, I think it's a nice positive. It gives players a lot of control over their moves, and when it comes to PvP and raiding, it definitely allows them to have a lot more strategy and a lot more just value for certain Pokemon, because as of right now, a lot of my Pokemon just seemingly do not have that much value because they don't have an exclusive move. I have quite a lot of really nice Metagrosses, but because it doesn't have Meteor Mash, it's essentially useless to me. And the same thing goes for Dragonite. Like, if it doesn't have Dragon Breath, Dragon Claw, I will opt to not use it over a Dragonite that does have that. So I think exclusive moves are a big problem, but Legacy TMs are definitely a way for Niantic to fix that. Now, Legacy TMs, if they were to implement this item, I think they have to do it right. I think with Sinnoh Stones, the lesson that we can learn from there is that the execution of that is crucial, because Sinnoh Stones, let's be real here, they've just been swinging the pendulum left and right. It's really easy to get Sinnoh Stones at one point, then it's extremely difficult. and then it's really easy again, and it's just kind of like a jumbled mess. So if they were to implement legacy TMs, I do think that they should keep it somewhat rare, because of course you don't want to flood the market with a whole bunch of legacy move Pokemon, but at the same time, you want to give players a good chance at getting those moves regardless of how much they play. So I like the idea of PvP awarding legacy TMs, and it's going to be an extremely rare drop rate, or you could have them as part of special rewards for special events. Like for example, if they were to do something really special for Pokemon Go Fest, maybe some kind of PvP tournament or a special raid, or maybe even special research, have legacy TMs exist through those means. And of course this will motivate players to just PvP and do every aspect of Pokemon Go in order to get these items, because of course these items are definitely going to be coveted because they increase the value of certain Pokemon, like I mentioned before. Now I was starting to touch up on this, but I really think it deserves mention. When it comes to legacy TMs, I think the sole reason why we should have them right now is because of PvP. Now when it comes to PvP, there's just a lot of stuff going on, especially with the Silph Arena and with a lot of local players just meeting up and PvPing with each other. And of course that's starting to die down because less and less people still need Sinnoh Stones, and that's really the only motivator that a lot of players have. We don't necessarily have any kind of world rankings aside from the Silph Arena, and of course with the Silph Arena world rankings, it requires you to attend tournaments and play their way. But I think for a lot of players, they would like to have just more incentives to PvP. Of course, people are always going to be driven by rewards. Adding rare candies was a nice touch, but a lot of people get rare candies en masse from raiding anyway, so I think people are not necessarily going to see PvP as a reliable source of rare candies. But if you were to add legacy TMs as part of the reward pool for PvP, I guarantee you there would be a lot more people interested in PvP. Now of course they do have to make tweaks to the PvP system and try to make it a lot more interesting than it currently is, and I definitely think they have the potential to do that. But when it comes to the rewards, I actually think having legacy TMs could still drive players to do PvP, even if it's still just a bare bones version of it. Now of course this all leads to game balance, because if players are doing PvP, if players are raiding and they want to have certain Pokemon that other players have access to, mainly because they've been playing since the beginning or they were just extremely lucky on community days, well, this would kind of balance it out. And I know a lot of players who are frustrated with the game because they started in 2017 and they don't have access to a lot of the powerful legacy moves like Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball Gengar, or Dragon Claw, Dragon Breath, Dragonite. And like I said, yeah, you could just trade for these Pokemon, but unless they are lucky, they're hardly high enough IVs for a lot of players to care. But there are people who have 100% IV Dragonites that they've caught in the wild or they've hatched, and they would love for these Pokemon to have Dragon Breath and Dragon Claw. Now, bearing in mind that they don't release something like Bottle Caps into the game, I think this is a great idea to introduce legacy TMs, because not only would it increase the value of certain Pokemon and provide a lot of game balance, but it would drive players to go out and want to catch more, because the higher IVs that they get, it's not necessarily useless anymore, because they could potentially be able to change up its moves to give it the ideal move set. Alright, now let's talk about some of the unpopular opinions regarding legacy TMs. Let's talk about the cons of having these items in the game. So, legacy TMs, what kind of cons are there? Well, I think the biggest one is the fact that players who do have very nice Pokemon with exclusive moves, they're gonna feel like their Pokemon are suddenly devalued. And of course, a lot of players that I know, they have just an army of Dragonite with Dragon Breath, Dragon Claw, or they have a whole bunch of 100% Gengars with Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball, and of course Mewtwo with Shadow Ball. And they don't want to see these Pokemon lose their rarity. They worked really hard to get these Pokemon, and they don't want some Joe Schmo who just started last week to also have this same Pokemon. So I can totally understand that. The whole feeling of exclusivity definitely drives a lot of players to play this game, and essentially what you're doing is you're ripping that out of Pokemon Go when you introduce something like legacy TMs. I, for example, have a whole bunch of Pokemon that a lot of other players will not have, And that actually makes me feel very excited about my collection. And the fact that I have certain Pokemon that are exclusive makes me really enjoy the game and really enjoy using these Pokemon, because it's in a way of me showing off what I have and how much I've played this game. Now, I am well aware that that's more of a surface level argument, that a lot of players out there that have exclusive move Pokemon do not care if other players have them. In fact, some people would love that, because when they're doing stuff like raiding or when they're doing stuff like PvP tournaments, they would like to have that challenge of going up against players with legacy moves, or they want to defeat the raid bosses a lot faster. And the way they can do that is if the whole team has those exclusive moves. So I can understand that this is kind of like an argument that only applies to one or two individuals within a community. But I have to say that it is a legit concern when it comes to legacy TMs. Now, another con is kind of like the same thing with the Pro. It is game balance. So if Niantic doesn't execute legacy TMs the proper way, it could definitely swing the pendulum in the opposite way. Now there are too many Pokemon with exclusive moves. Now there's too many people with very powerful Pokemon, whereas before it was just a nice balance. And this is something that Niantic has to be concerned about when it comes to introducing this item into the game. If they eventually do it, they have to consider how they're going to implement it. They have to keep it rare enough where it's not going to flood the market with exclusive moves, because that's the last thing we want, is everyone with the same Pokemon. I mean, having that strategic freedom is really important, but at the same time, we have to keep the rarity of certain Pokemon rare. Otherwise, the game will not feel that special when it comes to playing and trying for rare Pokemon, because that's essentially what the game is built around. So yeah, there are a ton of pros and cons to legacy TMs that I didn't get into, but these are just some of the thoughts that I've been having when it comes to legacy TMs. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are some pros that I failed to mention? What are some cons that I failed to mention? Of course, legacy TMs is a very hot topic issue. I think a lot of players are very happy or very unhappy when it comes to exclusive moves. And of course, legacy TMs are one of those things that constantly come up in those conversations. So definitely let me know your thoughts regarding legacy TMs in the comment section below. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. So if it's your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell. And if you really enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button. And yeah, let's talk about legacy TMs in the comment section below. I'm Count Jinsula, and I'll catch you all later.